I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back once more for the final episode of Hunters here on our Hunters AfterBuzz TV after show. I am your host, Kevin Allen, and I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Miss Haley Graves.
Hey guys, I cannot wait to talk about this finale. It was so good.
Yeah. Man, we're just kind of going over how we're going to run down the show, and we are itching to get into it. So on that note, let me just run down the show real quick. We're going to talk about Travis. He's in jail. We're going to talk about Jonah. He's on the hunt. And we're going to talk about Meyer. He's something else entirely. And we're going to end off this season with some speculation about what's to come, because boy, howdy, did they leave us on some sort of cliffhanger. But before we get into it, Haley, if it's possible, do you have overall thoughts, like nothing too specific, too detailed, just about how you liked the episode?
Okay, I can tell you this. I might have an unpopular opinion when it comes to one of the biggest mind-blowing plot twists of this episode. And then also, I have not enjoyed a season finale of a show this much in a very, very long time.
Yeah, I might have, I don't want to say I leapt out of my seat, but I definitely changed positions on the couch when it happened. There's so much of this episode that just had me like my face getting closer and closer to the television.
See,
Some really cool stuff.
mine was more doing just this, that was more of
Just the draw slowly
Yes.
going to the floor.
Yes.
Nice. Okay, well, okay, then let's just jump into it. I want to start with Travis in jail because I'm so happy that guy is in jail. Millie got what she wanted. She brought justice to a murderer. This psychopath is now behind bars. He has not won the day. He is now separated from his little boys club of Nazis, and he still scares the ever living hell out of me.
But okay, is he really that separated though? Because this episode takes us deeper into the twisted mind that is Travis. And he is almost happy and encouraged by being in prison now. And while he's making very scary threats at Millie, who's trying to get information about this Nazi regime, he also starts telling her that he sees this almost in an opportunistic way, because he's like, I have some of the most volatile, evil beings in one place that are just harboring anger. And he also just describes the situation as him going to being able to manipulate all of them. And that to me was just like, holy hell, he's about to go after all these prison people to start following him or something.
Yeah.
Like he's plotting something in his mind. And I think that's what is the most scary factor of Travis, is the fact that he has no loyalties other than to himself. And he never really had any loyalties to the Nazis. He is, complete American like we've known. And I think that's what ultimately is scary. But at the same time, we slightly see a soft spot in him for the first time when we see him with his parents in the prison. And we actually see him cry.
But that was a manipulation.
You think?
Like, oh, absolutely. You were just talking about how his whole master scheme is to manipulate these prisoners into building an army under his leadership. So when he was like, I feel like everything he's presented to his parents was a facade, because they were shocked that he murdered somebody, and his dad's like, I'm so completely confused by this behavior. They never expected it from the son. So I believe he was putting up a facade, or putting up some sort of personality for them, playing the model son to them, and he was just kind of like remolding that personality into one of like, oh, I'm just a troubled teen and I need help. I think it was absolutely a manipulation, because at the very end of it too, he's like, we need a really good lawyer, perhaps one of those Jewish ones, which fed right into his his plan of murdering them in front of everybody to, be the king in the prison yard.
See,
I think it was
and
absolutely manipulation. That's this
I
guy's whole bag.
do. So I will say, like, I can see that it was manipulation, but for me, I don't know necessarily that I was looking at Travis, the character, at this point. What I found really interesting about this was the specific writing that they chose to come from the parents. Because I saw a lot of, and this is kind of deep here, y'all. So,
Please
just bear
be
with
deep. I
me.
love deep.
But I kept kind of comparing Travis and what oftentimes happens in our society today, and that a lot of these instances where there's mass violence, that you see on the news immediately an image of the kid who has committed these massive acts of violence, and immediately the storyline that goes with it is they were neglected as a child, they had traumatic experiences with their parents, they have all of this sort of baggage that is supposed to almost in a sense ease our minds or
Mm.
make us feel like what they did was justifiable or there was a reason for it or it's validated. And I
That there
thought it
was
was,
some catalyst for it.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
thought that this was interesting that the writer specifically had the dad point out, we gave you everything. We
Mhm.
were we told you we were proud of you. We told you we loved you. We gave you ice cream. We did everything that you ever wanted. How could you now murder people? And so I thought it was really unique that they took that perspective of a child coming from a completely normal home and being raised the way he was, but him still just ultimately, in a sense, being pure evil.
So rather than uh,
You know,
victimize him, yeah,
rather than us getting this story of Travis coming from this dark home or this dark past or somehow validating why Travis is the way he is, now we're left still almost wondering why or if he really is just, not okay in the head because they for some reason like had his parents bring up the fact that he had a completely normal childhood.
I dismissed that originally because Greg Austin based his performance on Ted Bundy, and I think he did
Yeah.
an amazing job
Yeah.
because he definitely captured the spirit of Ted Bundy. But you're right. With that in mind, it didn't click to me that Greg Austin, while being inspired by Ted Bundy, his performance didn't write the role.
Yeah.
So the writers were probably just inspired by, I would just say, white male rage
Yeah.
and left it at that.
Yeah.
That's good observation because that's some important distinction.
Because like he like there is like how you just mentioned, like there is a distinction. Like while he does a great job of being very Ted Bundy-esque and having this persona of everything we would imagine a serial killer to being almost to the exact T,
Mhm.
but the difference is how it was written and the fact that he had a normal childhood. So the fact is Travis just purely evil? I mean, that's going to be still written and remain to be seen, but that's his tendencies are along those lines.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And another point, I guess I might disagree with you on though, because yeah, he's pure evil, but I still think he's also super loyal to the Reich. He's still Heil Hitlering with tears in my eyes in the middle of the night, loyal. And his
See,
just
I just
new version of the plan, like he's just working with the tools he's got, is to build an army by like basically using the white male rage of the
yeah.
prison community at his advantage and giving them a new scapegoat. Just like he's basically tapping into the frustration that you had mentioned is very present in our socio-political
Yeah.
climate or whatever,
Yeah.
and just giving them a direction in which to channel that anger.
Yeah.
Whatever it was that got them into prison, he's just going to be like, no, all of you guys, it's really this thing. And they're just going to, whatever scapegoat they had when they came in, they're going to turn toward the Jews.
Yeah.
And he's going to manipulate things from the inside out.
Yeah.
He's, in my opinion, he's still totally committed to the Reich. But
See,
you're,
and I will say the only
Mhm.
difference is where I feel like the Reich is committed to Hitler and Hitler's vision. I feel like Travis admires Hitler but has no desire to follow Hitler. I think that Travis wants to be his own version of Hitler and rise to
Okay.
power and follow in the steps of what Hitler did and have that same following and have that same violence and just darkness that Hitler brought into the world. But I don't necessarily think he wants to be a follower of Hitler. That's why I don't think that he's that loyal to
Oh,
Frank.
okay. You're right. Because in that previous episode, or no, 2 episodes back,
Yeah.
when he killed Tobias, he mentioned
Yeah.
like the Americans, we approve upon everything you guys do. I have
Yes.
a half an inch on Hitler.
Yeah.
Yeah, because okay, that you're right. So if his whole scheme the entire time was just to move up in the ranks of the Fourth Reich and then eventually supersede it,
Yeah.
well, now he can just take the shortcut
Yeah.
and do the American Nazi regime.
Yeah.
Oh, snap. That's really, really good theory. I was also just fixated on his last interactions with Millie. Because, I mean, that girl, she has got all the gusto and grit that anyone could ever ask for. Like earlier in the top of the episode, she comes in and presents her work to these three white guy superiors who basically, as far as I know, are all very in on this
Yeah.
because of how easily they dismissed it. Um, so yeah, I don't trust them. The fact that she challenged these obviously corrupt men at all, I was like, I can't believe she even brought it to the table.
Yeah.
But
It's
that's just who she is.
she's continuously impressive in very scary situations. You know, I think in this situation with Travis, to me, I saw her flinch a little in the
Mhm.
sense that
How could you not?
I actually saw fear in her eyes, but like fear with slight comfort and knowing that like, okay, like he is behind bars, like I have like that comfort in me, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like you could tell that she was like, this dude means every word he's saying to me right
Oh, absolutely.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said last time, she's great at throwing salt back at them. But what Travis said is it's very precise,
Yes.
and that is scary.
That, like how he said he literally imagines what her face is gonna look like as like didn't he even say like as he was gonna chop up the body of like her lover, like
Yeah, and then use the same knife on her throat and
yes,
stuff. Yeah, it was very
graphic.
specific and graphic. Graphic is a great word for it. Uh, I I am pleased that once she returned home, she was presented with an opportunity to maybe continue the hunt with this Jewish congresswoman.
Mhm.
But I'm nervous because this show's kind of taught me not to trust anybody. Uh, like I have no idea who this lady is. I really
Yeah.
hope she's genuine, but if she is, it would be great to have the two of them lead the next charge next season. So
Yeah, I definitely have to try and have some hope there, especially because I feel like there's a reason why Millie's mother also passes away in the midst of Millie helping basically take down the Nazis or discover all of this, you know, and how Millie constantly puts the job above all else, and even her morals, just everything. And I think and I hope that there's going to be reward on the other end of this with Millie's character because now that she has lost her mother, even though her mother um, was accepting of her and her um, sexuality, that I hope that on the other side of this, that Millie will end up being rewarded for being so loyal to her job and what she thinks has been right all along.
yeah, and while this offer from the congresswoman it seems too cool to be true
Yeah.
for me. Uh, it would be nice if she gets to kind of straddle both worlds by leading the hunters, but in a more legally
Organized
acceptable
way. Yeah.
way. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's got a little bit of legitimacy, at least backing it. If it's
Yeah.
not legitimate, it's got legitimate backing. And she might be a good replacement as the leadership for the Hunters because Meyer has been trying to get Jonah to step up as the leader. And at the top of the episode, he kind of really pushes him away for failing to
Yeah.
follow through and killing Travis in the prior.
Yes. He brings back to that like he keeps touching on it, that hero theory. You know, he tells
Mhm.
Jonah basically, hey, I essentially don't want anything to do with you. I'm disappointed. I thought that I was grooming you and molding you to do what was necessary when the time came and you couldn't do it. And, we see this situation must have been really serious after the crash. We don't know what transpired after that. All we see is um, Meyer laying in this bed with flowers everywhere, so obviously
Harriet
he's
pulls him
kind of,
out of the muck, and that's about it.
yeah. And like we see that obviously he's really banged up. And the fact that this is what he's saying to
Yeah.
like the young man that he's been molding and consoling and helping through all of this tragedy in his life, the moment that he like can't do the one thing you want him to do, like you push him away, I was almost like disgusted in the moment and
I
really
was too.
disappointed, but at the
Myers
same
is
time,
practically on his deathbed and scolding him for having mercy.
exactly. And like, but at the same time, it was like that was the most Meyer thing he could have ever done.
Yeah, yeah, I gotta admit it. And that prompts Jonah to go renegade, more or less. Like, oh, I'll go catch a guy all by myself. Not just a guy, like the guy.
Yep, he's
Um,
going after the wolf.
yeah. So he has this revelation that Ruth might have hid the information, the missing file,
Yeah.
in one of her cookbooks. And lo and behold, she tracked him down. She found the wolf,
And
as
see,
far as Jonah knows.
and like,
And
well, and like what I really liked about it is because now we're like kind of back to OG Jonah. We're back to the
mhm,
Jonah of why he even became valuable to the hunters, and that's his ability to solve codes and to solve puzzles and put things
yeah,
together that other people aren't seeing. And so I thought it was really neat that he's able to recollect these moments with his grandmother and pick up on these key phrases that she has said to him her entire life, and that's what led him to the cookbooks and to the fridge and ultimately figuring out who the wolf is.
yeah. I mean, I love that. I love seeing his detective skills come together. It's a really, like, he had the worst movie poster of them all, but it's a really cool scene to watch. To me, played out dramatically.
Yeah.
So he heads to this plastic surgeon's office and sticks out like a sore thumb. Like, that was embarrassingly obvious he was there for another reason. But turns out this guy doesn't like suspect anything ill of him. He turns out to be a very I don't want to say he's like personable, affable, but he seemed on the level. And he's being
See,
played by William Sadler, who I love.
See, I almost got the opposite vibes. I almost got that but then again, I guess it's because I'd completely bought in at this point. I was sitting on the edge of my seat. I thought that this was the wolf. I was a little skeptical because I'm not going to lie, throughout the entire season, I thought Biff was the wolf. And so I'm sitting there confused and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Like it doesn't feel like this is the guy. I'm trying to remember back to the scenes of, the young wolf when they're um in like the concentration camps, and I'm like, I don't see a resemblance, but like maybe this is the guy, and I'm trying to convince myself, but it doesn't feel right. But at the same time, like the guy seems sketched out by Jonah, and so I was like, there's a lot going on in my head during this.
See, I'm trying to like weigh Jonah's anxiety. Like, he was
Yeah.
definitely giving off this nervous energy
Yep.
and coming in for a real basic fix that this is way out of this guy, like way
Yeah.
above or under this guy's pay grade. So he had reason to be skeptical of Jonah, but at the same
Yeah.
time, he still offered help. And I'm also trying to remove myself, going like, I know the show wants me to believe this is the guy, and it very well is.
Yeah.
So to me, him being personable wasn't necessarily evidence that he's not the wolf, but that
Yeah.
ousting this guy is going to be a really great challenge, because
Yeah.
they got to verify him, at least,
Yeah.
or at least I hope that Jonah would. I was nervous that Jonah wasn't going to verify him and just
Mm.
gun this random dude down in his office, and either the consequence would be he was in fact innocent and now you're just a murderer,
Yeah.
or that he was correct but still he had to prove it.
Yeah.
There was, if Jonah went in there as reckless as he has been, there was no good consequence. I was surprised when the wolf left his office completely unscathed, and Jonah just was like, also had just left the office
Yeah.
without acting on it. But then he bashed the dude's head into the car and then delivered him to Meyer. So,
See,
there it is.
I will say that was the one thing that I knew nothing was going to go down in the office, because Jonah's desire to be back in the good graces of Meyer and to prove himself, because Jonah throughout this entire show has been trying to consistently prove his worth and prove who he is and prove something to people that don't necessarily matter. At the end of the day, like, it really, all it matters is what Jonah views himself and thinks of himself. And if Jonah can live with the person that he is every day, and he couldn't because he felt like he was consistently letting the people around him down. So it was like, whether he was trying to prove if he was Jewish enough, he was trying to prove if he belonged to the hunters, he was trying to prove that he could be a murderer, like now he's trying to prove his worth yet again to Meyer. And so that was how I knew that nothing was going to pop off in the doctor's office. And I knew that he was somehow going to have to bring the wolf to Meyer. Like, I knew that scene was going to have to go down.
I guess I get nervous every time that he, like, the fact he even brought a gun with him, let alone was starting to like grip it in the office. I was like, I mean, I know you're on fire at the moment, having solved the grand mystery, but how far are you going to take this, Jonah? I just, he was so hot and ready.
See, but like, if he couldn't kill Travis, I couldn't imagine him killing the wolf in the heat of the moment without showing Meyer that he found the wolf. You know what I mean?
Your observation is absolutely 100% correct. And I'm ashamed that I didn't just like know this. I got caught up in the moment. I assume Jonah would too. But no, he delivers him to Myers, which is the most Jonah thing that he could have done. Like, hey, I brought you somebody. Aren't you proud of me?
Look, I did it. I found him.
Deliver him in his PJs. I was like, Jonah, man, come on. Like, there's an order of operations here. But no, he just delivers him like breakfast in bed to Meyer. And Meyer, much to my surprise, just like waddles out in his slippers to go confront the wolf.
And see, where I was disappointed in myself is the fact that I didn't pick up on anything, honestly. Like, so how the doctor is sitting there, like shaking his head, like trying to speak. Like, I thought he was basically just doing what we had seen all the other Nazis do, and basically try to talk out of his rear to save himself. Like, that's what I thought.
Every single one of them turned out to be a liar. Like,
no, and they all had incredible stories.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's
every
what
last
I
one
thought.
of them.
That's what I thought was happening. And then even when Meyer kills the man and Jonah starts kind of freaking out, being like, you didn't do the ritual, you didn't do what you're supposed to do, and like Jonah starts piecing it together, I was still sitting there just like, is Jonah going crazy? Like, what is Jonah talking about? And like, it's still like, even up until this point, like I was like, there's no way. There is no way.
I didn't think that it was what it turned out to be.
Yeah.
I thought it was just Jonah being disappointed.
Yeah.
Like, if Jonah is the light to Meyer's darkness, if he's what keeps Myers from completely crossing the line, then Myers crossed the line. Myers, there's no light left in him. He doesn't say prayers for people. He is not has a man of faith by any means. That he has succumbed to the darkness. And I thought Jonah's being aghast at the absence of the prayer was just that, oh, like Ruth would be, oh, you can't be saved. Like, there's no going back for you. We've lost you, Meyer. What it turns out is that it wasn't Meyer all along. He forgot the prayer because this man never knew about it, because
he was
this
never
man
Jewish.
is the wolf, exactly, all along. And what a twist.
See, this is my unpopular opinion. I was disappointed in this. I almost felt that it was lazy. I just wasn't okay with it being Meyer. I thought that it was, I don't even know how to articulate what I'm trying to say, because even like the story that he fed up of, oh, I took him to the woods and I killed him, and then I fled, and then people recognized me, so I got my face changed, and then I came to America and I said I was this guy, and I've lived his whole life, and I've kind of been a Jewish, but psych, I was never actually a Nazi. Like, it just became too much of a stretch for me. Like, I would have much rather the show taken the approach of this being Meyer all along, this being his grandfather, them finding the wolf together, Meyer maybe even mercifully choosing not to kill the wolf, but getting his own closure in his own way, and, like, accepting the justice system or something, and, like, Jonah helping him, and him able to come to that closure, and Jonah and Meyer do this as grandson and grandfather. And I would have much rather had that ending rather than this very, very fabricated ending that it came to be.
Your opinion isn't that unpopular.
You had the same one?
Yes.
Because I literally, when we watched it, I was like, that ending, I was like, that just pissed me off. Like, that actually bothered me.
So it's one of those, like, as it was happening, I just refused to accept it.
Yeah.
To the point where I was like, maybe he's making up this fabrication to save Jonah's morality or somewhere, would like to protect Jonah from the truth that that Meyer, this is actually Meyer, and Meyer is the light, and Meyer is gone. Like something greater than identity. But no, this was just a matter of a fake identity.
Yeah.
God. I don't want to bash. That's not what we do here at AfterBuzz, but and pile on the negativity. But I felt the same way. I don't know if I would use the word lazy, but again, it's probably appropriate because they've been teasing since episode 5, I think, that Meyer's been withholding something, that there's this secret, and we've been saying it all night, that Meyer is proving more and more to be a less good individual, that there is a darkness in Meyer that is so deep that it's overtaking those around him, and he's making bad judgment calls, and it's corrupting Jonah. I never expected it was because he secretly was one of these hate-filled Nazis, but at
see,
the same time, this revelation does seem like it comes from very little setup.
Yes.
And go on.
And I was just gonna say, and it almost now, you can really, I was able to really read into more things, and you go back to, I'm blanking on her name, but the woman that he just shot point blank.
Tilda.
Tilda, there we go.
Sauer or something.
Now it makes sense because he knew it was her, because he knew her. He probably had seen her, had interactions with her. But it also is a testament to how evil and manipulative he actually was as a human, because at that point he had no other reason to kill her other than, like we have said, self-serving ones, because ultimately he knew her, and I think he really shot her because she potentially maybe could have revealed who he was.
I think you're right. You had mentioned a couple episodes ago how he was manipulative, and I disagreed with that word. I was like, I don't think manipulative is quite the right word, but boy, was I wrong. That's absolutely what he was doing. And throughout the whole season, Tilda, you're absolutely right. That had to have been the case. It makes perfect sense. Because every time that they would bring up a photo and compare it to an old man and be like, is this the guy? I'm always like, well, people age differently. You can't, I don't know how good you are at recognizing someone from a photograph that is 40 years old.
Yeah.
But if he knew them personally, then yes, it would absolutely make sense how he was able to confirm so many people so easily.
Yep. Same with in the farmhouse, the guy that they were electrocuting. Same thing.
Oh yeah, Von Braun. Yeah.
Von Braun. Yep.
The banker, he was like, I'm like, I don't know how he has this banker pegged so well, but now I do. So I guess that was the setup was there if you focus on that, because outside of it, he really did change himself completely. And I guess that's the other thing I find a little bit far-fetched, is how someone can be compared to all these other Nazis who have been blending in and building new lives and creating new identities for themselves. but that this guy wouldn't create a new identity, but really commit to a previously established one.
Yeah.
And go through plastic surgery and learn all the mannerisms and change his dialect and become a master of the Jewish faith, which is not something you just study on. It's not like taking a test, there is a lot to it. And I appreciate Jonah calling him out, being like, that does not make you Jewish.
Yeah.
However much you may study the lore and now subscribe to the lessons in the Torah, like that does not make you Jewish. And that to me calls right back to that conversation he had with Simon
Yeah.
about what Judaism really is.
Yep.
So
like I was just this is the only time in the show I've been disappointed. And like I get where the intrigue is, and I get like that it's like, oh my gosh, surprise, Meyer's actually the wolf. Like I get on paper how much it could make sense and be, exciting and intriguing, but watching it, I was just like, dang.
I had so many thoughts. I had just as many thoughts running through my head as there were cutaways for that sequence. Like, I mean, the show was definitely racking my brain. Like it was trying to do that, and it was very successful. And that's good entertainment. I'm all about that. It was successful in what it was trying to do. But where it left me was here's I think what made me disappointed about it. This entire show is essentially Jewish wish fulfillment. I remember the creator talking about that every time that we get to see these vengeance stories with Nazis, it's not the Jewish people doing it. I think the closest one we've seen is Inglourious Bastards. There's the bear Jews. Like there's like one guy taking it out, but every other time you see it, and every other Tarantino flick or Captain America or Wonder Woman, they're not people of the Jewish faith or people who survived the Holocaust getting the vengeance. It's somebody else doing it for them. And this show was the one instance where we let Jews have their fun.
Yeah.
But if it was all arranged by a Nazi, a secret Nazi, then you take that away from them. To me, this was on a level, and here, I'm going to piss off the internet right now. This was like if it turned out not only was Rey a secret Palpatine in The Last Skywalker, spoilers, guys, sorry, but it turned out she was Emperor Palpatine all along.
Yeah.
That's what this felt like.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, what disappointed me about it. Not that it didn't fit narratively, because I'll give it that. It really does set up season 2, where Meyer's now out of the picture, that Jonah has to step up and take the reins and come at it with a whole new type of vengeance, a whole new perspective.
Yeah.
Narratively, it sets up a great season 2, but as far as how it treats season 1 and the premise of this show, I feel like it betrays it.
And I'm right there with you. I think that, like I said, on paper, it's a great idea. On paper, it's fiery. On paper, it makes sense. It's cool. They executed it well, as you said, but it just left a lot to be desired. And I guess the only piece that, because I'm still even disappointed in the fact that I could find some appreciation in the fact that they actually had Jonah, come full circle, and he was able to step up and do what needed to be done in this moment, and he killed Meyer. But it wasn't him actually stepping up, I feel like, for the right reasons. Like he still, I don't know, like it just didn't sit right that it ended up being Meyer, him being the one that he killed,
I felt like what they were trying to do was, we've been talking about how Jonah has slowly been turning into Meyer.
Yeah.
That there's less of Ruth and more of Meyer in him. And at the top of the episode, we got that wonderful conversation, the flashback with Meyer and Ruth, and about Jonah and what will eventually be his legacy, because they were discussing the character reveal of Meyer over time, and how he relates to Jonah, and how he's going to impact him, and because Jonah has that light that Meyer used to have. So in that conversation, it's fake Meyer talking about his
Meyer.
relationship
Yeah.
with Jonah,
Yeah.
and Ruth is worried that fake Meyer, thinking it's real Meyer, is going to corrupt real Meyer's light that is
Yeah.
been revived through Jonah.
Yes.
So that I made that as confusing as I possibly could. But what that means is at the end of the episode, I think they were trying to set up that by Jonah being more and more like Meyer, and at the very end, uh, fake Meyer goes, or the wolf says like Meyer, he recognizes Meyer
Yes.
in Jonah. So I
Yes.
feel like what the show was trying to do was be like real Meyer got his revenge through Jonah. So real
Yes.
Meyer is the one who makes the kill in the end, and thus everything's tied up neatly in that.
Yes.
The trouble is what the wolf saw in Jonah wasn't real Meyer's light. It was fake Meyer's darkness.
Yeah.
So if that was what the staff was going for in writing this, I feel like it was a really, really cool and creative attempt, but it fails itself.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the show doesn't end there. It still drops a lot more stuff to set up next season. First and foremost is that, again, Sister Harriet, I don't know where she stands on who she's really working for. I feel like she's a double agent.
She is sketchy McSketchter.
And after the revelation of Meyer, I'm like, I don't need more of that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But then it goes even further with they've kidnapped Joe and somehow drove him all the way to Argentina.
Yep.
To where, and oh man, did this pull the rug out from underneath me? So this entire episode, we've been seeing this flashback of these blonde kids frolicking through the cornfield,
tossing like a ball in the air.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, so who is this kid? Is this like really young Meyer, and we're getting further backstory, or just some artistic representation of Meyer's innocence?
Their clothes too were very 1950s.
Yeah, very
like 1940s, 50s.
30s,
yeah,
very period appropriate.
Yeah.
So I kept thinking it was a flashback of young Meyer, maybe it's a flashback of the wolf. Like it's something setting up this narrative that Jonah is pulling together by introducing these two. But no. Turns out it's 4 separate children
that all look the same,
are very Aryan, and living in the present day of 1977. And my first thought was, okay, we're in Argentina, which is notoriously where the conspiracy of Nazis, like this is where they all fled. The theory is they all fled to Argentina for some reason. And I was like, okay, cool. So these are like Hitler clones. These are young Hitler clones. They are trying to, they're trying to reincarnate the Führer, and they've got 4 copies as a failsafe.
Well, and they literally had the stereotypical, how you always hear, blonde hair, blue eyes. And as they're sitting there, and we see
socks and everything,
and we see the colonel come in, and I want to say there was one episode that they referenced the governor. Like there was one episode that they hinted that there was someone above the colonel.
They did. I just remember, I wondered if that person was even real.
Yes. And I was like, oh, like there's someone else that we still have to discover who this person is. And then they didn't bring it up again. Oh, but lo and behold, it's actually Hitler.
Yeah. I was like, okay, hold on. So these kids aren't who I thought they were. And there's 4 of them. And oh my God, the colonel's still alive. I don't know how she got out of that, walking as well as she is. But yeah, I was right there with Joe and the completely bewildered look on his face that there's this old man stepping down the walkway. And
I was literally just the whole scene, because they did a brilliant job producing.
Oh yeah.
Just building the drama and building the tension, and you're just sitting there. I was completely on the edge of my seat. I was like, there's no way. There is no freaking way that this is who they're about to make this person be. And the fact that all they had to show was the mustache. I was like,
I love they did that. I love
it saved, like, not, I won't say saved, because I still thoroughly enjoyed this episode. And even though my slight dip of disappointment for who the wolf ended up being, like this brought me right back up to where I was when I was watching this whole episode, because I was just like, this is why this show is awesome. They just freaking brought back Hitler.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the kind of like B movie nonsense I signed up for, and
Yeah.
I can't wait to see this B movie setup done in the nitty and gritty style that this show has, like the very raw, grounded kind of
I can't
violence that it does.
I can't wait for them to tell us the story of how Hitler survived, or how he came to America, because I feel like that has to be, when and if there's a season 2, that has to be one of the first things brought up. And I feel like they have to kind of tell Joe, like explain to Joe how this
I
is
hope
even
they do.
possible.
I hope they just lay it out on the table Bond villain style, because I got so many questions. Oh
Same.
man. Yo, my first one though, and so I guess let's go right into our predictions. Like
Yeah.
we're there's nothing to talk about in the news. I'm done with special segment because this
And
is all I want to
now,
talk about
your
now.
AfterBuzz TV
So we could talk about season 2 and what we
predictions.
think. One thing that I don't know if this qualifies as a prediction, but we learned the Colonel's name. Did we ever hear
Yeah.
it before?
No.
Okay, so the governor here, Governor Hitler, that's fun to say,
Yeah, just
called her Ava,
yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, is she named for her mother?" So did Ava Braun and Hitler not commit suicide in a bunker, but instead they together flew out of the country, had a child, and raised this girl as her successor, which is the only reason I can think of is why there's a female successor to the Fourth Reich.
Yes. No, I
So,
really think that that's pretty much what it has to be. And I can't wait to hear the story of how they managed to get out, and how they've also managed to fake the entire world into thinking that he's dead.
I mean, this whole thing has been about the power of secrecy and
Yep.
cover-ups, conspiracy, painting a completely different picture of reality and current affairs in
Mhm.
America and the world, uh, as orchestrated by Nazis or those who aid and abet them.
And I
So,
also feel like this show's also pretty much made us contemplate if there really is a good and evil, because because I feel like, even especially during this time, you saw the person next to you and you placed judgments on them, or you automatically, didn't like them for whatever reason. And in reality, like, Americans brought the Nazis, who we were supposed not to like, and who did all these evil things based on our definition of what evil is and what doing bad things to people are. But we brought them to America, so it's like, in reality, like, where is there even a line of what's good, what's bad, what's evil, what's not, who we like, who we don't like? Like, there's just, whoo, a lot. And that, like, I just wouldn't put it past this show and somehow incorporating the fact that we are bringing Hitler to America, and there's some just reason why the Americans decided to do it.
so this show, yes, absolutely is all about the nature of
Yep.
morality and the gray areas that exist in between good and evil. I wholeheartedly think that there is a definitive evil,
Yeah.
but with the Americans deciding to harbor Nazis for the greater good of the country, and it's that phrase
Greater
that I feel
good.
like is what is that?
Yes.
I think we know what evil is based on what the Nazis have
Hmm.
done, but this notion of what is the greater good is the one that gets people.
Well, and it's mostly the fact that, because remember back to the episode where it wasn't even their justification for the greater good. It was the fear of someone being better. And it was
Someone
the
committing that same atrocity. Like at least if we commit it, then we're safe.
well, no, because remember they said, they were like, well, what if the Soviets got them?
Yeah,
What if
that's
the
what I mean.
Soviets use them? Yeah, so it was more so the fear of someone having the power and being better than us. So we're gonna keep it to ourselves and be
Yeah,
in control of it.
it's yeah, someone's gonna do the bad thing. It might as well be us. There's a gun on the table. We might as well be the one holding it.
Yes.
Whereas I would be like, or you could just not like dismantle the gun so
Yeah.
no one can use it. But whatever. Because at the end of this episode, Biff Simpson is renewed now as Boris Frodsky,
Yep.
which great name.
Takes
And
another identity.
so now we've got this like high-ranking Nazi who was also a high-ranking American senator in the hands of the Russians. So,
And like, but in reality, and like that's the other crazy thing about the show. We still never really learned anything about Biff.
oh yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're totally right.
Like
Oh my
he had
God.
such a hand in the entire show and in the fluidity of the show, but we really have no idea who he is. We don't know what he did in Germany. We don't know what he did to the Jews. Like we know nothing about him.
Yeah, it's a really God, he's still the wild card.
Yeah. I know.
Oh God, and season 2 is gonna be freaking crazy.
Yeah.
And I look forward to it.
Same.
Yeah,
So do
as
I.
flabbergasted as this episode left me, and I'm still eager to be like, okay, all right, tell me television, how's this going down? Oh man. Okay. Well, but we have to wait a good while till that's going to happen. This is the
Fingers
final episode of
crossed.
season 1, so I plan on being back for season 2, and we hope that you, our fans, come back for season 2 when that happens. Because we're definitely going to be there covering this stuff. So if you like what we've been doing so far, like, subscribe, give us 5 stars on the iTunes. Thank you all so much for being here, for sticking it out with us. We know this was a long process in getting out these episodes, but I'm glad for how it went down because this was a grand finale. Thank you, audience, so much for being here. Thank you, Haley, so much for being here.
Of course.
Any final thoughts before we close this first chapter?
Oh man, I am just so happy that I got to come on the back end of this ride and talk about this show with all of you because as you can tell, I really loved it and I cannot wait for season 2.
Awesome. All right. Well, in the meantime, where can everyone find you online?
You can all follow me on Instagram, Haley Graves with 2 S's. That's HALEYGRAVESS. And on Twitter, Haley1Graves2.
Awesome. And if you guys want to discuss the nature of morality and the metaphysical quandaries of ethics, whatever, I like throwing out buzzwords on Twitter. And it's Kevin Allen Says, and Instagram at Kevin Allen Graham. Yeah, you guys, this has been an amazing production. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as we did. And when it comes more time to hunt more Nazis, we'll see you then.
Yep. And in the meantime, AfterBuzzTV.com, lots of written articles. It's what we're doing in our meantime. And hey, there's just about an after show for everything you're watching these days. So make sure you check it out on all things on YouTube, AfterBuzz TV. We got a lot of good stuff for you guys.
That's true, because I just finished this binge watch. It means I got to start another one. All right. I'll be looking for your recommendations.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.